There is a quiet kind of fear that a lot of people carry now. Not the fear of failing, not even the fear of being disliked, the fear of being ordinary, the fear that if you are not impressive, you will be invisible, and if you are invisible, you will be forgotten, and if you are forgotten, maybe you never really mattered. It is strange how quickly that fear can take over a life. You can be doing fine, you can be working hard, you can be kind, you can be trying. And still, in the background, there is a question that will not leave you alone. What am I becoming? What am I building? What will I be known for? That question is not always ambition. Sometimes it is anxiety wearing ambition as a disguise. And when people talk about baby boomers, they often talk about big things: prosperity, struggle, work ethic, family, a different world. But there is something smaller and more intimate that is easy to miss. Many of them grew up with a skill that modern life has made rare. They knew how to be unimpressive without feeling unworthy. They knew how to live a normal day, in a normal life, and still feel like they belong to the world. This is not a video about who had it better. Every generation carries its own weight. Every era has its own shadows. This is about one lost art, the art of being unimpressive, and why it mattered more than we realized. Picture an old family photo from the middle of the 20th century. Not a staged portrait, just a snapshot. People are standing the way people stand when they are not thinking about how they look. The clothes are practical. The smiles are imperfect. The hair is not trying to be a statement. Nobody is curating a personal brand. The photo exists because the moment happened, not because the moment needed proof. There is a softness in that, a freedom. It is not the freedom to become anything. It is the freedom to already be someone, without a performance. A lot of boomers grew up in a world where identity was quieter, not always healthier, not always fair, not always kind, but quieter. Your value was often attached to simple, readable things. Do you show up? Do you keep your word? Do you contribute? Do you take care of your people? Those values could be limiting. They could be harsh. But they also gave many people a stable floor to stand on. You did not have to reinvent yourself every morning. You did not have to explain yourself to the world every day. You had a role, a worker, a neighbour, a parent, a friend. And your role came with a kind of belonging. Today, roles still exist, but the culture surrounding them has changed. Now, identity is treated like a project, something you have to build, something you have to refine, something you have to market. Even rest has to look meaningful. Even hobbies have to look interesting. Even healing has to look like progress. And that is where identity anxiety begins to grow. Not because you are weak, not because you are ungrateful, because the modern world trains you to connect worth with visibility. If your life is not visible, it can start to feel unreal. If your progress is not visible, it can start to feel like it does not count. So you begin to measure yourself with tools that were never meant to measure a human soul. Numbers, comparisons, highlights, milestones that somebody else invented. That kind of measuring does something subtle to the mind. It turns life into an audition, and an audition never ends. When people say boomers had less identity anxiety, it does not mean they had no pain. Many of them carried stress that they did not have language for. Many of them carried loneliness inside busy lives. Many of them carried expectations that were heavy. But for a lot of them, the anxiety was not centered on one modern fear. The fear that you are not special enough to deserve your place. Because the world did not constantly ask them to prove that they were special. They were allowed to be ordinary. And ordinary did not mean failure. It meant life. It meant work and weekends. It meant school runs and grocery lists. It meant talking to a neighbour you did not deeply know. It meant fixing something small instead of replacing it. It meant helping without announcing it. A quiet life, but a life with weight. One reason identity anxiety is louder now is that comparison is louder now. In the past, most people compared themselves to a small circle, a neighbourhood, a workplace, a few families, a few classmates. Now your mind can compare you to almost anyone, at any time, in any place. You can wake up and instantly see the best moments of 1,000 lives. People travelling, people achieving, people glowing, and your brain does not interpret that as entertainment. Your brain interprets it as social information. It asks, are you keeping up? Are you falling behind? Are you still worthy of attention? And because the feed never ends, the question never ends. When comparison becomes infinite, identity becomes fragile, because no human being can feel secure while standing in front of an endless scoreboard. Another difference is that boomers often lived inside routines that gave them shape. This is not about romanticizing exhaustion. It is about noticing what rhythm does to the spirit. When you go to the same places, you become a familiar face. When you do the same small things, you become someone who can be counted on. When your days have a pattern, you do not have to manufacture meaning from scratch. Meaning begins to accumulate, like dust on a well-used table, like footprints on a familiar path. Today, many lives have less rhythm and more constant reinvention. Jobs change faster, cities change faster, friend groups scatter faster. Even your identity is expected to update. You're supposed to be evolving all the time. That can be exciting, but it can also be exhausting. Because constant reinvention does not give the nervous system a place to rest. And a restless nervous system will start to search for stability anywhere it can find it. Often, it searches through control. Control your image. Control your story. Control how you appear. Control what people think. That is when being unimpressive starts to feel dangerous. Because unimpressive means unprotected. Unimpressive means nobody claps. Unimpressive means no proof that you are doing well, but here is the truth that a lot of modern life hides. You do not need applause to be real. You do not need attention to be worthy. You do not need to turn your existence into a highlight reel. You need something simpler. You need to feel grounded in who you are when nobody's watching. And that is what the lost art of being unimpressive can give you. It gives you permission to live without narrating yourself. To have a good day that is not impressive. To have a hard day that is not dramatic. To have an ordinary moment that still counts. Because it is your life, not your performance. A lot of boomers did not wake up thinking about self-improvement. They woke up thinking about what needed doing. And there is a kind of peace in that. When it is balanced. Not a peace that ignores feelings. A peace that comes from usefulness, from contribution. When you can do something small that helps, you feel like you have a place. You do not have to be extraordinary to be needed. You just have to show up. And this is the part that can heal younger generations without forcing them to become someone else. You can keep your dreams. You can keep your creativity. You can keep your ambition. But you do not have to carry the belief that your worth depends on being impressive. Because that belief will never let you rest. There is another way to live. A way where identity is not a billboard. A way where identity is a quiet sentence you can trust. I am the kind of person who cares. I am the kind of person who follows through. I am the kind of person who keeps learning. I am the kind of person who tries again. Those are not flashy identities, but they are solid. And a solid identity does not need constant proof. It needs practice. It needs time. It needs a life that is allowed to be ordinary sometimes, to be unimpressive, to be human. There is a moment many people recognize, even if they have never named it. You open your phone without thinking. You scroll for a few seconds. You see someone else doing something impressive. A perfect home, a perfect trip, a perfect body, a perfect career update, a perfect announcement. And then, quietly, your day changes. Not because you suddenly want their life, but because your own life begins to feel smaller. Even if nothing is wrong. Even if you were fine 1 minute ago. That is identity anxiety in its most common form. It is not loud panic. It is a slow erosion, a subtle feeling that you are not enough unless you are remarkable, and the modern world is very good at feeding that feeling, because it is built around visibility. In many spaces now, you're not rewarded for being steady. You're rewarded for being noticeable. You're not rewarded for being kind in private. You're rewarded for being impressive in public. You're not rewarded for quiet growth. You are rewarded for big moments. And if you are a young person watching this, it is important to hear something clearly. Your generation did not choose this environment. You inherited it. You inherited an economy of attention. You inherited a culture of comparison. You inherited the idea that identity is a product. So if you feel tired, it does not mean you are weak. It means you have been carrying a pressure that earlier generations did not carry in the same way. A pressure to be constantly present, constantly improving, constantly proving. And if you are a Gen X viewer, you may understand this in a different way. You may have grown up with more freedom to be unrecorded, more freedom to make mistakes without an audience, more freedom to have a normal day that disappeared when it ended. That did not make life easy. But it did give the mind something valuable. It gave the mind privacy. Privacy is not just about hiding. Privacy is about having a place where yourself does not have to perform. When people lose privacy, they start to manage themselves. They start to treat their personality like a public relation campaign. And slowly the question becomes, who am I really when I am not trying to look like someone? That question can be painful, but it can also be the beginning of healing. Because the answer is often simpler than you think. You are the person you are when you are not auditioning. You are the person you are when you are useful, not visible. You are the person you are when you keep your promises, even small ones. You are the person you are when you treat people well, even when nobody can reward you for it. That is not a glamorous identity, but it is a peaceful one. There is a phrase that sounds almost too small for how powerful it is. Let it be enough. Not in a way that kills ambition, in a way that saves your nervous system. Let it be enough that you did the dishes. Let it be enough that you texted someone back with kindness. Let it be enough that you took a walk and felt your mind settle. A lot of people have been taught that if they accept ordinary life, they will lose their edge. But the truth is often the opposite. When you stop burning energy trying to look impressive, you get energy back. Energy to create, energy to build, energy to love, energy to do meaningful work. The art of being unimpressive is not the art of giving up. It is the art of living without self-humiliation. Because so many people today are not being pushed by goals. They're being chased by shame. Shame that says you should be further ahead. Shame that says you should be more interesting. Shame that says you should have figured it out already. That shame is not motivation. It is poison, and it is common. So let us talk about something practical, something gentle. How do you bring this lost art back in a world that rewards performance? You do it in small private ways. You practice being unimpressive on purpose. One simple practice is a no-proof day, a day where you do something you enjoy and you do not document it. You do not post it. You do not turn it into a story. You let it belong only to you. At first, this can feel strangely uncomfortable, like you're wasting the moment. That discomfort is information. It is the part of your brain that got used to needing an audience. When you gently refuse the audience, you are training something deeper. You are training presence. Another practice is the small, useful thing. Pick one small task that improves your environment. Make your bed. Clean one corner. Fix something loose. Organize a drawer. Not because it is content, not because it is aesthetic, because it is a signal to your mind. I can take care of my world. This is one of the quiet gifts many older generations carried. Usefulness creates dignity. It reminds you that you have a place, even without applause. Another practice is the same place ritual. Choose one place you return to each week. A library, a cafe, a park, a small shop. Go at the same time. Do not go to be impressive. Go to be a familiar face. This softens identity anxiety in a way that is hard to explain until you feel it. Because it gives you belonging that is not dependent on performance. It gives you weak ties, small recognition, the comfort of being part of the world. And that comfort makes it easier to stop chasing proof. Then there is the identity sentence, not a slogan. A quiet sentence you can live by. I am the kind of person who shows up. I am the kind of person who keeps learning. I am the kind of person who tells the truth gently. I am the kind of person who does not abandon myself. Choose one, write it down, and let it guide your choices for a week. This is not about pretending. This is about choosing values that are stable, because values do not demand constant novelty. Values do not demand constant success. Values can hold you through normal days. Finally, there is the gentle boundary. If you know there are certain accounts, certain content, certain patterns that trigger the feeling of not enough, you do not have to punish yourself for it. Just reduce exposure. Unfollow a few things that make you spiral. Take a short break from the endless scoreboard. This is not weakness. It is self-respect. You would not stand next to a loudspeaker all day and call it mental toughness. You would step away. The modern feed is often a loudspeaker for comparison. Stepping away is not quitting life. It is returning to it. None of these practices are dramatic. That is the point. Identity anxiety thrives on drama. It turns your life into a constant storyline that must be exciting, meaningful, and impressive. The healing comes when you return to something quieter. A life that can be ordinary and still sacred. A life where you can be unseen for a moment and still feel real. And this is where the boomers, at their best, offer a lesson without needing to be idealized. They remind us that it is possible to feel dignity in a simple life, not because the world was perfect, because their world, for many of them, did not constantly demand a performance of identity. So we can take the best of that lesson and bring it forward, keep the freedom we have now, keep the choices, keep the openness to growth, but add back one missing ingredient: the permission to be unimpressive, to have days that do not become milestones, to have moments that do not become content, to have progress that is quiet. Because your value is not a spectacle. Your value is not a brand. Your value is not a scoreboard. Your value is that you are here, and you are human. And a human life does not have to be loud to be real. A life does not have to be impressive to be meaningful. Sometimes, the most healing sentence you can say is simple: let it be enough.